Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You are listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And it is so good to have you aboard with us today. If you are immediately, right out of the gate, if you're like, man, I like that guy. All right. Well, we appreciate that. And we want to thank you for just taking a minute to go over and subscribe to the podcast and, leave us a little love letter right after you give us those 5 stars, whatever stars you do. And when you do that, please just let us know. Send us email at info@yourmoneyontap.com so that we can send you back some Money on Tap gear. So we got that part of the show out of the way. And man, we have got a show for you today. I'm already starting to run long and just my excitement here because not only of the content that we have, but Dan, Ben, you know what show this is for us at Money on Tap?
Tell me, Seth.
Are you ready, Dan?
I'm ready for it.
All right. Something tells me you already know, but this is show number 300 in Money on Tap. 300 shows, you guys. Round of applause for you guys. And I'll throw myself in there as well. Besides just throwing myself under the bus, I do like to give myself a little bit of, hey, good job, buddy. Good job. We've done it.
I cannot believe we've done 300 shows. We just concluded 8 years of radio broadcasts, podcasting, you name it. To think about the journey that this has been, it's kind of funny. Seth, I think back, Dan, remember when, for our audience and listeners who don't know, we supervise and audit financial professionals. And we do some training and teaching and so forth. But it all started because somebody else came to us saying they wanted to start a radio show. Remember that, Dan?
I do.
So at the onslaught of it, we found the radio station, we found the block of time, we helped the person, get all the information, everything. And then I don't know if they just got staged. I don't really know the whole story. They told us it was a compliance issue for them. They felt like. And next thing you know, we had already committed to a radio show
for somebody else.
Next thing you know, I'm looking at for somebody else.
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh my goodness, we are going to be on the radio. And
well, hold on a second. Do you remember what you asked me and my response to that?
No, I don't.
Yeah. You said, hey, Seth, do you want to be on a radio show? It didn't take me but a second to say no. That's not what I'm looking forward to. That sounds really stressful. And what do you do? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just funny. And then so we were live radio for a little over 2 years, and we started getting a lot of really great feedback. We were meeting a lot of people, helping a lot of people. We started having a lot of fun doing it, and then the station decided they were going to go to classic rock, and they were no longer going to be a talk station after 25 years. And so that's when we ended up with another relationship. Broke out our guitars,
picked up a cheap drum set, living the dream. We became classic rockers.
Dan brought out the cymbals. I thought that was nice of him to.
Well, I had to grow my hair out by default. I was the one of the three of us could probably pull it off,
Somewhere between like Creedence Clearwater and Led Zeppelin. What was the name?
And then God found us landing with WDER, and I really think that was ordained by Him, and I think that's pretty amazing because we are so connected to our faith and our planning and the work we do. And
So Ben, were you a Christian before you decided to switch the radio show over to WDER, or is that just kind of part of the contract obligation? Or I'm totally joking.
I know you are. No,
Ben and I met at Liberty University. If you don't know our history there, so that was, anyways. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being able to exercise my faith through my role for people. So that is what God's called me to do, and I'm happy to do it. I just think about all the stuff, you guys. I mean, we, to the point, folks, we ended up building a radio studio. We got to the point where driving to the station was just a bit much, and it took a lot out of our day. So we ended up making the investment a number of years ago and built a studio right in our office, and it's that has been great for us. So
I think you took a look at the cost of what it was at $4.50-$5 a gallon to drive there on a weekly basis versus build a studio, and it was just more economical to build out this beautiful studio.
Well, put a few mics in between our faces, and we looked a little better. So that's how we do it. I really do think, just looking back 8 years, I just cannot believe it is 8 years ago that we started this, and fumbling through, and podcasting is something that we've grown into, which has been great. And Cassie's doing a great job on spreading that word. And I mean, we're on every major venue. I think I don't even know a distribution network we're not on. Just to think about how this little kind of mishap in somebody else's radio dreams turned into an 8-year-long story with you guys. And I do appreciate both of you guys a lot. I know I tease you and so forth, but for the people listening, Seth and Dan are two of my closest friends, and I just feel privileged to have them as my partners. So it really has been great. Thanks, guys.
As the new guy in here, I was kind of the third to join up, just because of some kind of company structure and some other things that were in the way for a period of time. It's been really a pleasure kind of jumping on board this pre-made ship. I mean, you guys really had refined the whole production, and all the equipment was in place, and it's been incredible to be part of, and just a nice smooth transition in. I know you guys kind of laid the groundwork way back when, but thanks for doing all the heavy lifting. I appreciate it from this perspective,
And from that standpoint, by the way, everyone, Dan is the one that booked the radio show. Didn't join us originally, so but with some arm twisting, it was a great addition for sure. That was funny.
Yeah, it took Roger, our engineer, several recordings to edit Dan before it was okay to put on air. He was a love child, a rough start. I kid, I joke. It was awesome. It was just was one of those things.
We did a lot of interviews before we had to just fall back and say, Dan, I guess you're going to have to be on. We don't have anybody else.
Nobody else will come on with anymore.
Oh man! Oh, goodness gracious! Well, thanks to our listeners. I do appreciate all of you guys for listening for so long and supporting us. It's been fantastic. It's just it's a real privilege. So,
yeah, it is. Hey, speaking of Blast from the Past, do you remember what our first show was? Well, it was Death and Taxes, believe it or not, was the very first show that we aired here. And, it was fun to take a look back and listen to some of what we were doing at that time. And Death and Taxes is still a very relevant topic, and one that we talk about frequently here at Money on Tap, because just the significance of investing through and around taxes. But so it was that was our first show, and on our 300th show, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about this, and it's Put Your Money Where Your Faith is the title for today. So what are we looking at? We're looking at doing well by doing good in faith, values, and investing. And it's such an awesome concept for us to kind of break down and work through, not only with our clients, but with you here on the air today, and share some of this experience, share some of this love here at Money on Tap. But Ben, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, death and taxes. Well, if you put your money where your faith is, you are going to feel like you took death by taxes. But we have people come in all the time, and honestly, no matter where your faith is there is a constant change in the conversations we have, because we do have people with lots of different faiths, but we have people inside the same faith that might have different callings or value-based perspectives that are just different, and they're not always the same, and that's okay. I remember I've shared this before. I remember, guys, we had made an allocation to a hotel ETF, and I had one client call me and say, I just have this feeling that owning this is contradictory to my stand on gambling. And when we dug down, there was a number of hotels inside that had casinos in them, and it wasn't an intentional investment on our part. We weren't looking for gambling as an asset. It's not, but it was an opportunity that we saw where the RSI looked low. The strength of the opportunity looked strong. And we took advantage of that. And what we did for that client was, and we respect those concerns, because I really do appreciate people who pay attention to that stuff. It brought awareness to us. We took in consideration of that. We looked at that as a holding concern for us and evaluated that. We did eventually exit that position as an organization. But we were able to move the client out of that position separately. We opened up a tertiary account for them, moved the holdings over, removed that asset, and was able to, when that asset was removed from the main portfolio management, we were able to then, move them over laterally. And that was actually a very strong, helpful opportunity for them. And, they appreciated it. And, we actually had a long conversation as an organization. I remember, guys, we were talking about it. We're like, is that something we need to remove? Let's evaluate the amount of gambling. What's the revenue piece? Are we participating in gambling? Because gambling is considered wrong. So, from a biblical Christian perspective, and how do we evaluate that? And so that was a long conversation, because we can't really control every stock inside an ETF. And that really does create problems for us as investors. And as trying to be a good steward with the money that we've been asked to manage. And I just it's hard to do, and we try to do the best we can. And I think that's kind of the point we have here.
Yeah, there's a lot for us to dig into today, and I love, Ben, how you kind of were able to say a lot with what you were sharing there, and that part of it can be very much in the same faith, differences of values. Right? What's important for one person may not be important for another. And so having the ability here to go ahead and take a look from an individual perspective and help each client with what those pieces are that are important to them and meet those needs and objectives. It's technology. It's wonderful and it's beautiful. That what we're going to be able to share here with you today. We got a show to do. And with that, it is time for Money in the News.
First today, coming from Fox Business, thanks to Aislinn Murphy, the perks offered to Costco, BJ's Wholesale, and Sam's Club members. So this is something that I think we all thought was interesting, based upon the fact that, to varying degrees, we're all members at some of these clubs. And in the kind of retail space, in the face of inflation, as we've been trying to deal with, it's a great opportunity, great place to shop and potentially save some money. And on top of the fact that each of these outlets offers different perks, right? So they have membership clubs. It's something we do need to pay a fee to get access to. But for those kind of varying fees that you do pay, there's, discount prices on buying stuff in bulk, which I think we all understand that model. But as well, there's some additional perks and incentives that they offer you. And those can vary a little bit. In some locations, I know here in southern New Hampshire and Massachusetts, you basically have access to all three you can choose amongst. But Seth was pointing out earlier in the Pacific Northwest, that's not necessarily the case. So, opting for one of the three probably makes sense to try and save some money, but maybe people will choose to take advantage of all. But it's interesting seeing kind of the breakdown on what the different perks and benefits are. With Costco, they're kind of famous for their $1.50 hot dog and soda combo. I think we touched on that on Money in the News a while back, where there was some, given the inflationary issues out there was some pressure on them to raise prices, but the CEO stepped in and said, absolutely not. We're gonna hold our claim to fame here and ride out that benefit. Although that's interesting, a little bit funny. I'm not sure that's the one to choose this, make this decision based on, because they all offer about 2% annual rewards, which is good. And that lines up across all three. There's some variation, though. For Costco's as an example, you get up to $1,000 a year that way. But at Sam's Club, it's capped off at $500. So depending upon, how much you spend and how often you use rewards programs like that, that might be a kind of an easy differentiator. But some of the programs also offer different things. Free curbside pickup. This is speaking to BJ's here now. They accept all manufacturers' coupons, which I thought was interesting. So you can bring in a coupon from elsewhere and still get the discount there. And card holders can also have items delivered to their home in as little as 2 hours if they're in the right zip codes. But that comes at a fee of about $14.99.
Yeah, I've been a member of Sam's Club for, I got to say, north of 10 years. Usually I try to stay away because every time I go into one of these big stores, I end up spending I feel like it's a better financial decision just not to go in, because even though I might be getting a deal on, 12 cans of, I don't know, some sort of,
so good.
Some sort of,
that is so
right?
good. I mean, if you don't identify with that, people, I don't know what to tell you. Like I think we've all made the choice. Like, do I just go to the store on the corner for a couple things, or do I go to Costco? And then we regret it. We're like, God, $500 later. What did I do?
I know. I really I'm like, I've got more toothpaste or ketchup bottles or mustard. And then when you're doing something, you can't find it because you stuck it somewhere. And then you end up going to the store anyways and buying, it's crazy. Or you're buying, I was telling Dan in the show beforehand, it's like, for the last, 40 some odd years, I've lived without this appliance. But today in Sam's Club, how can I live any further without buying this random appliance?
Air fryer, wasn't it? Air fryer.
I can't. Not everything's going on the show, Seth. But the thing, but I was just reading an article. I've never been a Costco member. I was just reading an article. You can buy gold at Costco, gold bars at Costco. Are those on the shelf there? Can you just pick them up?
Oh, they're just handing them out. They're just handing them out to you for being a member when you walk in. Here, have one of those.
Well, they'll give you a tenth of a gold bar in your rewards here. It's really, really hard because when people are trying to save money, putting stuff on a credit card and building up interest and so forth on a lot of things you don't need now has its own cost. Like if you were to evaluate your 10, 15, 20% interest rate or 25% interest rate on a credit card. If you got credit card debt, shopping at those places makes no sense because it's actually better for you to buy less and less sitting on interest, because by the time you're done paying it all off, you could be paying more than you want for that bottle of ketchup.
Yeah, the model has been really amazing to see. The reason we have Home Depot is because of Costco, right? Because that concept has been working its way through in just different models. Walmart. We used to have Walmart. That's where my mom went, girl. It was the bulk foods, bin foods, and that's what we would go to as a kid. And I remember going to Costco for the first time. It was like the flatbed, the little hand truck flatbed. No cart for me to climb in and get a ride, but I did ride on the flatbed. But it was it was a totally different experience. And I remember my mom talking about, I can't get out of that place without spending $100.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but one of the biggest problems or frustrations I have has nothing to do with shopping at these places. I cannot stand going to Sam's Club and them checking my receipt like I'm a thief constantly. These people scan the receipt. They're snapping a few things in the basket. It's like,
did you actually buy two 24 packs of eggs? Do you have them both?
Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, they go through this stuff sometimes with a fine tooth comb, and there's a line to exit the store. And I'm thinking to myself, I can go to Walmart and I can shop anything I want. I slide out of there, boom, 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 done. Owned by the same parent company, right? And Sam's Club, I've signed up a membership. You have a photo of me, my signature. I've agreed to all these terms. And by the way, I paid a fee to be in this store. And you treat me like I'm a two-bit thief.
Funny. You feel like you feel like you're getting the once over by them. I'm normally like grateful because they're like, oh, did you not get the thing that you have been charged for here? Like I've been charged 3 times for something. And it was like, oh no, I only have one. They saved me about, plus the kids really, really want the smiley face written on the receipt. I mean,
we don't get any of that. And I've never had multiple things ever in my car, but it's crazy to me. It's like, if I stole something, you have more information and data on me because I had to show you my card to get in the store. I don't know. Dan, what do you think of that?
You know, I've never really had them. I've been pretty neutral on the checkout guy, to be quite honest. You know, I've had some good ones, some bad ones. Occasionally get the smiley face, Seth. I've been there. I've had that. But then you do get some that are, I think, a little bit more on the enforcement end of this thing and really kind of digging deep and making sure that you're not sneaking out with that extra 18 pounds of tuna or whatever it is that you might have had. You know, so it's a good, I like those places, but I will acknowledge, though, to Seth's point and your mom's point, really, like you go in there for the discount and you spend way more than you ever expected. I mean, that's every time, because you do find tons of stuff you didn't expect to. And it's just, you know, me shopping there is like my wife going to Macy's probably. It's just like, why? We really just didn't need that, you know, but it's, I was telling Ben in pre-show, my favorite sweater of all time. I bought it at BJ's. So, you know, I got to remember that fondly.
Wow.
And that's not my favorite sweater. So,
well, you know, I'm glad that they at least keep that, what is it, the $1.50 hot dog with the drink and some chips or something like that. When we were in Vegas this last year for some cheer competition for Augusta, and we were picking up some things there, I felt like I had finally seen the light because everything else in Vegas was just through the roof. But we could come back there and have $1.50 hot dogs. And we did a couple of times. That's what we did for lunch. If you're looking to save money in Vegas, just go to Costco and pick up some hot dogs and the rotisserie chicken. That was a good one.
Next up, we have, the Fed is everywhere. And everyone knows I love talking about the Federal Reserve and my displeasure with them. The Federal Reserve is slashing rates ahead of Election Day, would likely just superficially boost U.S. wallets, experts say. This is something that I've been talking about, is the idea of the delay. And the article gets into the fact that, you know, if they do, you know, cut rates, it would potentially boost the economy. But Dan and I were talking pre-show, we were just talking about how, like, you know, Squawk Box has just said, which is, you know, CNBC, that, you know, the Fed's probably not going to, you know, raise rates, and therefore, you know, we're going to probably see a drop in the market, and therefore, you know, hence we have. And, you know, if they do cut rates, it's only going to make the spike even more grand, I would say, from a conspiracy perspective. But what's interesting about this is really a couple things. Powell says, hey, we're not political. We're really just trying to do what's best in the interest of this country. And, you know, they're only going to cut rates if it makes sense. It's not looking like they're going to, but if they do, it would probably be around election time. And, you know, meanwhile, you have Trump quoted in the article saying, I will not be seeking for Powell to be in his job if I get elected, which then therefore makes it political, Dan, because I would say, well, guys, right? He wants to keep his job.
Yeah. Then you have Biden that says, quote, I can't guarantee it, but I'll bet you those rates come down more, because I bet you that little outfit that sets interest rates is going to come down. Whoa. If that's not a loaded statement, I'm wondering, like, what did he really mean? They had to backtrack all over that and say, well, this is where, you know, he's talking about, but it sounds like he is saying that we're going to do away with the Federal Reserve, if I'm not reading that correctly.
Well, the Federal Reserve, and, you know, I just think that they are so, I mean, I'm not a proponent of the Federal Reserve anyways, but they're supposed to be independent from the political organizations. They're supposed to be able to, address this stuff. But the pressure from the president is just way, way too hard for them to ignore.
Well, also the pressure for Powell to keep his job when he passed up two really what should have been rate increases right before his own reelection, and then comes, gets reelected and drops the hammer with the 75 basis point rate increase out of nowhere.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times. He was like, boom, boom, boom. I mean, yeah, like he was like, no, we're not going to probably raise rates. I got reelected. Boom.
Man.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of liars. I really do think so. And if they don't think so,
this is the only place where you can get the truth from, you guys, right here.
Done with those guys.
All right, you guys, we got some more truth. We got some more truth to coming your way here. The way, the truth, and the life, we hope. And anyways, where we're going to be going today is you doing well by doing good, or putting your money where your faith is. Faith, values, investing. We're going to get going here in just a minute. You're listening to Money on Tap. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Mickle on a Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you looking for professional guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Advisors are here to help. Our team of experts will provide you personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit us at BrayshawFinancial.com today and schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Thank you. While we're taking a quick break there, for going over to the Money on Tap podcast and subscribing. Please just remember to send us a letter to info@yourmoneyontap.com. Just say, hey, and I subscribed, and we want to make sure to send you some Money on Tap gear with that. A lot of fun that we just get to engage with you guys as you are either on the radio with us or in the podcast world. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to be here with you today. Spend this time sharing what we love to do in financial planning with you. Even if you're not our client, gosh, it's good to be here with you guys today and just share what is significant and of value and brings us purpose in our practices and in our lives. This is what we love to do. And what a neat opportunity to talk about putting your money where your faith is. And, maybe we could say, hey, putting your money where your values are, or not putting your money where any of those things. There's different flavors and different ways to approach investing, and having the options and having technology that just gives us such a beautiful integration with our portfolios and managing assets for our clients. Holy cow, am I grateful for what we can do today versus, what this looked like years and years ago. I remember, probably one of the most common ways that we've come across people investing or, not investing is a boycott. Maybe you have not shopped somewhere before or not subscribed someplace in the past. Well, that's one way of you saying, my money matters, and I am going to make sure it's going into places that I align with. And that's a great step forward. Now, in terms of investing, boy, when I first got licensed in 2007 with my securities licenses in a stock brokerage. And shortly after, getting out of the stock brokerage world and starting to get into the financial planning world, I'm working with people that are, now my neighbors, not just the person I called over the phone trying to, get them Bristol Myers Squibb. This is a much fuller engagement. And I've got my friends and family and people from church that I'm working with. And one of the things that came up right out of the gate was, well, how do I invest with, values that are important to me? And, I actually didn't have a solution or an answer. I went out and, of course, found all sorts of information out there on, different funds and different ways to do this and that. And I tell you, I was so discouraged. I was just bummed. No way to put it, because the mutual funds, which is really all that was available to invest in this, theme, the performance on them was so poor. And I was like, how do we do this? I'll show you what's available besides just picking onesie twosie stocks that you're like, yep, like them, which is great. Love doing that too. But in terms of having kind of that, mutual fund bucket of stocks idea, there wasn't even an ETF out there, which would have made things tax efficient, much more simple for a lot of people. But anyways, with that, I'm just relieved and grateful that at this point we have so much more to offer. But with that, it's not all about the offer here today. We're here to educate and talk through, what these different parts and pieces are of this, values-based, faith-based. What does this look like for us today?
Yeah, Seth, that's a lot of really great conversation. And I think for a lot of our listeners, they're perplexed as well. I mean, this is something that has been an ongoing battle, is to find things that make money, that are good, wise investments, where, Matthew 28, you're not burying your money in the sand. You're actually allocating and, reallocating those assets in a way that's going to make it powerful. And you can walk away feeling like you're being a good steward versus, what is this? What am I buying? And we're trying to fulfill that in a lot of different ways. And we've actually taken, kind of the bull by the horns, and we actually manage a pure stock portfolio of 25 to 30 stocks to do some of that. We've had people on our show who run biblical based ETFs and mutual funds and all sorts of different things to just try to bring awareness to this conversation to our listeners because it's not about we couldn't do business with everyone that listens. We just can't. I mean, it's, sometimes the plate is full. You just can't do it. I mean, we have a plethora of clients. We do have capacity in certain ways and certain people that we can help, but, we just can't help everyone. That's why we give so much information away. And the truth is we want to see people do well. And, if you're listening to us and you're listening to this show, our number one goal is for you to walk away with something valuable each and every time, but also to apply it in a way that's, you can put your head down and say, I'm doing what's right. Because, there's areas and domains that none of us want to invest in. And we all have those limits and lines which makes us all interesting and different. And, for some people, just different. But, it's just, it's so complex in evaluating. And I've sat down with people who are like, I don't want any money in oil and gas. I don't want anything. And to do that is so fundamentally difficult. People don't understand, because when you buy the S&P 500, trust me, there is a ton of oil and gas in there, and you have no idea how laden that is. So then all of a sudden you have to start breaking it out, and then you have to send it to a whole different level of evaluation to really try to meet that person's goals. And even then, we're never 100% certain unless you're buying treasuries, right? I mean, that's really where you get down to, we're a CD at the bank. So then that's what you have to ask yourself. And then you have to ask yourself, how far am I willing to go? Is that bank lending money to oil and gas companies? Because if I put my money on deposit with that bank, we could be directly lending those dollars to an energy company. So it just depends on how far you want to take this. What are your thoughts, Dan? I mean, we deal with this all the time, so I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you come to the table with somebody who's driven by some principle, some value, something in the background that guides them, there's really two approaches to, how do you get to the conclusion of how do you best handle their money? And I think this goes to your point, Ben. So there's really two ways to do it. You can filter out companies to exclude them, right? So as people say, listen, I don't want to invest in XYZ, whatever their cause is or their concern is. We do have the tools these days, much different from when Seth started working with some clients and trying to figure that all out by hand, essentially, is what we had to do. Now we've got technology that will filter and exclude, right? It'll just push companies out of the portfolio that, violate some kind of a criteria we set. So there's the doing it by exclusion, by filtering. There's one methodology. The other methodology is to try and create impact. So there's people who say, I don't want to invest in XYZ. And then there's others who say, I do want to invest in this cause. I want to put my money into this specific domain because I have this goal I want to help achieve. Although I can't do it myself, I'll be one of thousands or millions of investors who are able to express our voice by getting invested in this cause. Right. So there's two significant differences there in terms of what any individual's approach might be. Right. So just to recap it, exclude because you just don't want to do business with certain entities, or to impact, meaning there are entities out there that you specifically want to fund. And then there's the other breakdown of, well, are you a values-based investor, which you concern yourself with, things like ESG. We've talked about this quite a bit on a number of shows, and Biden implemented some legislation to have ESG options available in all 401ks. That was, met with all kinds of different interpretations and opinions. So there's the ESG, environmental, social, and governance values, quote unquote, type of investing. And then there's the faith-based investing, which is, again, more of the impact side of this equation, where you're saying, these are causes, these are organizations. This is the belief structure that I want to make sure my money is getting invested in. That also, it does operate on a basis of excluding certain things, but, getting invested from faith-driven principles is different from, what's deemed values-based investing these days, which is really just that ESG situation.
And I love that impact concept. I love the fact that someone says, I really want to put my money here and I want to do this, because it makes our job easier. But I like the fact that people are looking for a positive outcome. Dan, I really think that that's just a really healthier perspective versus just trying to pull everything out of stuff, saying, listen, I want to invest in this company because I believe in this, or I believe in this area. So find me an allocation that gets me the greatest exposure there.
Yeah, there's lots of. Oh, go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I might take us a little different direction, and I just wanted to hear what you were going to say, Dan.
No, I found that really interesting too, Ben. Is just that's a conversation I've not had very often. I much more often have the, hey, listen, I don't want to do this. Right? These are the things I want to stay away from. These are the types of industries that I just don't want to participate in any way. I don't do it in my private life. I don't want to do it with my investments, which you hear fairly often. I mean, that's a regular conversation, but to have someone sit down and you say, listen, I really believe in this. I know I can't do it myself, but I want my money in here supporting this cause. It's almost along lines of gifting, right? It's almost charitable, although, the pursuit is not a tax benefit. It's, or to, not necessarily humanitarian cause. It's to make money. That's part of the story here, but it has a little bit more of that gifting kind of feel.
So there's different ways to do this, and there's different effects as well. And I think it's been interesting as we've have these conversations with, one of the issues. I'm going to try to tell a story as best I can, probably going to butcher it, but anyways, it's one of the issuers that we were having a conversation with. And an issuer is somebody that creates an ETF or a mutual fund. And they were sharing with us the impact that they have. And their fund, this fund in particular, what it's trying to do is basically replicate the S&P 500 and the performance of and the tracking of the S&P 500 index without having, companies in there that are, just a litany of things. I think primarily they were filtering out for tobacco and pornography and a couple of other things there as well. And what they came across is that Costco, or they brought to their awareness, is that Costco was sponsoring a pride parade, which was not really in alignment with the portfolio or the sponsor. And and for them, what they chose to do was reach out to to Costco and say, hey, we want to let you know we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop you from our ETF. And the reason for them was not so much that it was a pride parade and that they were sponsoring it, but that they were not sponsoring another parade as well, which was, it was just for them having
something. Yeah, it was something they had declined to, sponsor other things equally, like Christian organizations or and so forth. Yeah,
right. Some functions that they had. So they were sponsoring Pride, but they weren't sponsoring other. And Costco's leadership really didn't even know this. And so as they were made aware, hey, we're about to go ahead and sell our position, which was significant in Costco. That's going to affect the price of Costco, but we want you to know why. And Costco did a right about face and said, whoa, we didn't even realize that's what we're doing. And they went ahead and made that sponsorship available. So this is just one.
I don't remember, Seth, if they pulled one sponsorship or they added the other sponsorship, but they evened it out. And that was the interesting.
Yeah.
And this, for our listeners, the last thing any executives want to do is be talking to the board of directors saying, our stock dropped XYZ% this quarter because, an ETF called us and told us they were dropping us because of our unfair assessment of this. I thought the ETF screening was actually interesting, because it wasn't a, yes or no, you are, engaged in some sort of thing. It was whether or not you were doing it in what they had deemed as an ethical manner, which was fairness or equality. And not removal entirely. Now, some of our listeners may not agree with that, and I can totally understand that perspective too. I think if you're listening to this show right now and you have some real passion about some of these things, find somebody who can help you mitigate those, because I think those callings are really important, and we value those. We encourage those. We want people to experience, a peace around those. I mean, if you want to give us a call, happy to work with you and talk with you about that. I think Seth's going to get into some of that in a little bit. But these are things that you really should listen to your heart on. And I do wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, it's neat to see not only how some of these, the effect and the impact is really where that comes back to. Some people in that, first of all, that negative screen of saying, I'm not going to send my money that direction or invest that way. There's another side of that too, which is the passion or how much kind of impact or weight you can have in companies that you are investing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. That kind of falls under the SRI, or the sustainable, responsible, and impact considerations while investing. Right now, we need to take a quick break. And while we are taking a break, please just go grab that podcast, subscribe, leave us a couple stars, send us a note, send us an email, let us know so we can send you somebody on tap gear. And we will be right back with more Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is. What? No, put your money where your faith is. That's what we're doing. We'll be right back. Hey guys, Seth Krussman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. So how do you do well, or by doing good, investing in your faith, your values, and really putting your money where your values and your faith is? Phenomenal topic that we get to go through with you today and have answers and have solutions. Not just questions to, great. We got to start there. It's like, hey, what's important? And, break it down. Like, what are the pieces here, Dan? When we talk about, looking through and having impact in a portfolio, what are some of the things that come up and the kind of the different flavors?
Yeah, I mean, there's, it is broken down by, kind of all the major faiths in the world these days. But, the ones that, that we encounter the most and speak to the most and happen to be where our hearts lie is, in the Catholic and Christian communities, there's a lot of commonality. There are different funds that appeal to, if you want to get very specific, those two different groups, but there's a lot of commonality, as you might expect, in terms of the things that they look to exclude. We're talking about, things like abortion, based industries, embryonic research, addictive behavior things, tobacco and gambling, in particular. Adult entertainment, of course, is, considered taboo in that environment. So these types of, this is more of the filter, right? So these are the types of things that we're going to look to exclude from a portfolio, for people who approach us, with that belief set. And it's interesting in looking into some of this, getting prepared for the show that, it seems like a new trend, but these principles, certainly in the investment world it seems that way as these new products have developed and this whole series of ETFs we spoke about. We've met with some of those fund managers, but the roots of these principles predate the investment world by a long shot. And they really are foundationally driven by the scripture that we're all raised on and hear from. So this isn't, some of these investment tools seem like kind of a new trend, but what drives the decision makers, what builds these filters, the beliefs that support it, this isn't new news, folks. These are things that have been part of that set of principles for all eternity. Right. I mean, these rules have been around for, thousands of years. and we just are, it's just surprising to me that these things aren't the foundation of investing and not the other way around. Right, guys? I mean, at the end of the day, the principles of, healthy management and so forth. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we have tools because, and the sad part about it is the tools have only really gotten better, I would say, because of the people who are not necessarily of, religious descent of any accord. It's more about, kind of this, the kind of the global crisis of climate change and all of the stuff going on. That's really brought these tools to the forefront versus, I mean, guys, 10 years ago to even ask a management company about this, you'd be like, their heads would be spinning on to tell you how much oil and gas impact they would have on carbon emissions or anything. But now, boom, you've got it. We can tell you everything about it. It's pretty phenomenal how these tools have changed. And I'm really excited because I want to turn the mic over to Seth, and he knows this. I want him to talk about a client experience and what we did with the tools we have and the things we do for our clients who really want to understand where their impact is and how granular and how incredibly precise we can outlay a portfolio for somebody in a way that will change the way they sleep at night. Seth, can you go ahead with that?
Yeah. Recent conversation. Client was reaching out and looking to make some changes. And what they had already done is a really great job of looking at some different funds, mutual funds and investment funds, and using those towards what was important for them. And in their portfolio, they wanted to make sure that there was no tobacco and no fossil fuels. Those were significant. So had several of these funds lined up and was, really kind of looking for some options and recommendations. And what we were able to do is go ahead and take a look at their current and see their current funds and see what they were doing. And then because of the size of the portfolio, that allowed us to use some different resources, which are called separately managed accounts. And what that does is it kind of changes the landscape where we can actually have individual companies, working with fund managers, but breaking out those like an ETF or a mutual fund, but into specific companies and giving some guidance and recommendations and elimination or bent, what we would say, kind of moving and weighting in different directions that actually has more impact. So pulling that apart really. And with that, what we were able to do is take a look at the current portfolio and see, okay, well, what is the the overall impact right now in terms of oil and gas, right? Right now, there was actually about a 4% allocation into oil and gas. There was 1.2% into thermal coal. And there's, you name it, there's pesticides, small arms, fur and leather, GMOs, cannabis, predatory lending, all sorts of categories that we can take a look and see exactly where this current portfolio is lining up. And in proposing some options, we were able to go ahead and bring that down into 0 oil and gas and 0 tobacco. Really cool. First of all, good job for being able to just do what you do on your own and minimize some of that impact. And then going the extra mile here and saying, well, let's take a look at the carbon intensity. What is this footprint that the portfolio has in current and a proposed? And the current has about 84.8 metric tons of CO2 per $1 million in revenue. And so that's the current carbon intensity footprint. With the proposed portfolio, we were able to bring that from 84.8 down to 54.1 metric tons. Significant. Raising an energy efficiency in the process as well from 4.3% up to 15.4%. Taking the green buildings from 2.2% to 4.5%. So really having much greater impact in the direction that you want to make a difference with those dollars.
That's incredible. I think when you talk to somebody about being able to say, hey, we can reduce the amount of metric tonnage by 40% just by reallocating and building your portfolio differently by the software we have, that we can actually break this down to that level of understanding and to even remove and refine these things into a point where, hey, listen, you want 0? If we do these investments, this is where we can bring it to. And what's wonderful about this is that the amount of clarity we get. I mean, we can tell you how much riot control investment you have. I'm sure no one's even thought about that. I mean, it's like, you don't like pesticides? Boom, we can get rid of it. You have an oil problem? Yeah, we can create that. We can not only get rid of an oil investment, but we can tell you how to change the impact of carbon emissions if that's really what your focus is. And my whole thing is hey, listen, I'm all for taking care of this world that God has given us, but He also told us to use its resources. And there's lots of ways to use resources, and there's responsible and there's irresponsible, and there's ways to use your money that's responsible and irresponsible. But I really think that, if getting a good understanding of where you're investing is the step that you are, compelled to do, this is where you need to call. You need to call us at 855-226-8551. I know Seth's going to tell that number later. But this is what we do. And understanding your investments and truly being empowered is your opportunity today with us. If your advisor can't do it, so just give us a call. We can look at your portfolio, figure out if you're unfairly or unreasonably allocated into things that you didn't have. And I talked about that story we had in the past with, the ETFs. Now we have the ability to, run those ETFs through screeners. We have the ability to give a real perspective, so we can make a decision of what kind of level of percentage are we impacting any particular area. And that's how we've become stronger as a company, because putting your money where your faith is really is a calling that we all have.
I think that's a phenomenal 300th show for us here at Money on Tap. I didn't really lead in with how grateful I am, not only for you, our listeners, but Dan, Ben, you guys are incredible people and mentors to me. And these 300 shows have had impact and weight in my life, in my family, in my clients, in this time that we spend together. Valuable time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us at Money on Tap. And we look forward to show 301. We'll see you there.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of Osaic Wealth Incorporated. Osaic Wealth Incorporated and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.